Are you struggling with your lower back, always rounding on your deadlift, and wonder why you can't get your hips through to finish your deadlifts? Well, I'm gonna help you out in this video. Let's get to it. Hey, this is Smitley here from Thirst Gym. And if you're dealing with your low back always being rounded on your deadlifts, looking like a dog that's pooping, or you just can't get your hips through because of that position that you're getting in, or even worse, you're dealing with low back pain because of how crappy your deadlifts look, I'm gonna help you today. If you're looking at some technical issues that we might be able to address, some physical limitations that we might be able to address, or it may just be your structure, and we can help give you some activities that are gonna help improve the way your structure operates in your conventional deadlift. The big thing I want to emphasize here is there's not always a fix-all or a simple one thing that you can do, because it's really ultimately going to depend upon the way that you deadlift and the way that your body is built. More than likely, you're going to be built different than I am, that I'm built from the other person. So the way that we deadlift might change just a little bit, but there's going to be some key takeaways that you can probably implement starting today to hopefully help you fix that ugly, rounded low back deadlift. Let's get to it. All right, the first thing I want to talk about are your structural limitations. So I got my lovely friend Bertha here, and we're going to talk about your pelvis and the way that it might be shaped or oriented when you deadlift. So the first thing, if you're always finding that your back is rounding, what we're probably finding is that your sacrum here is tipped actually backwards, okay? So it's actually going to be backwards like this, okay? And so essentially, your hip bones are pushed out, and this is gonna come backwards like this, and this is gonna lead to what we call a flat back. And so what's gonna have to happen for you to go down and get that deadlift bar is, as you bend over to do it, you're gonna have to orient this whole thing forward like this with your sacrum pushed backwards. And this is gonna end up, when you go to actually pull, this musculature right here is going to then tip this forward as this is bent over. And that's gonna cause your low back, as you can hopefully see, all this up here is then just going to round, and that's gonna cause you the rounding issues of your low back. So what we need to do if you're one of these people is we need to actually bring your pelvis back like this and actually get your sacrum back to move forward rather than being tipped backwards. So what can work well for an athlete like this, if this happens to be you, is to just try elevating the front part of your foot on like some 5-pound plates and then try deadlifting and see what happens. If you find that your low back rounding immediately goes away, then what you found is that we essentially need to compress this part of your pelvis. So we need to actually bring this in, and then that's gonna allow everything to move the way that we need to. And so what you can do is you can do some side lying activities. So if you're on your side, this is actually going to help open up the back part of your pelvis right here. And then we can do some different activities from this position, or you can do essentially anything that's going to compress these. And I'm gonna show you some exercises here of what those look like. All right, so the first activity you can do as part of your general warm up before you actually go to deadlift is take a foam roller and actually place it on your side here. And you want this actually above your you can tell where your femur is at here. You want it at the top of your hip bone, and whatever side, doesn't really matter. You gotta recommend starting with your left side, but you're just gonna lean into that side and actually try to squish the top part of your pelvis. And then you're gonna take your top leg here and you're actually going to bring it across your body, and you're actually gonna feel your body turn towards the floor. And you're just gonna do that about 8 or 10 times, really trying to focus on that rotation part. You might feel a little bit of a stretch in your low back on that side. Nothing crazy, but you might just feel it start to open up. You may also feel that TFL, that glute med, get a little bit of work there, but it's totally normal. You're just gonna rotate back and forth, and what that's gonna do is actually allow us to compress our side, essentially the left one on this side. So I would just do that 8 to 10 times, and then you're gonna switch sides. And what that's gonna do is just compress that pelvis together, giving us some more space in the back for the next exercise that we're gonna do. All right, for this exercise, you're gonna take an object, a ball, a yoga block, doesn't really matter. You're gonna place it high up in your groin so that you can actually squeeze it. Feet are gonna stay flat. You're gonna take a light kettlebell, nothing crazy, 20, 30, 40 pounds, something of that nature. Grab it with both hands. And then what you're gonna do is you're gonna squeeze this ball, keep your chest nice and tall. Feet are flat, you're just gonna perform a normal hip hinge or RDL, so knees are soft, chest is tall, butt's gonna go backwards. I'm just gonna reach my butt back so I feel a big stretch in my glutes and come back up. It's not a huge range of motion, just a regular kind of RDL motion here. What it's gonna do is gonna open up the backside a little bit. The squeezing is going to help us keep that pelvis squeezed. And then we're gonna find that helps open up our backside. And now when you actually have to go down to grab that deadlift bar, now you're gonna have space to push your butt back into. Your shins are still gonna stay relatively vertical, and you're gonna be able to grab that deadlift bar in a nice, solid, long position, and that's gonna help you with your deadlift. All right, now that we've addressed the backside of being able to create that space, we're gonna talk about some technical things. So the first one is definitely the most common. That's learning to pull the slack out of the deadlift bar. So if you're somebody that goes to a deadlift and you come down here and you grab the bar and you just yank and go, that's gonna immediately throw you into that position where your low back is gonna round, and then you've got risk of having some kind of lower back injury. What you're gonna wanna do once you get in position, arms are long, reach nice and long, keep that chest tall, come down to the bar, and you wanna pull that slack out. So hopefully you can hear that click that I'm creating. You want to be able to pull that out before you create that big pull. So here, pull that slack out, and then go. Come back down, slack out, so pull, push, go. By doing that one technical thing, that cleans up a lot of issues from the low back, just immediately rounding and butt kicking up, and then we're forced to use our low back in that position. So really create a lot of tension down there with your arms long, think like they're hooks, pull till you feel that click, and then you're good to perform the exercise. All right, another great coaching point is being able to think like a spring. We want to create as much compression together by using our body and the barbell and the ground. So once we're in position, we keep those arms long, you've got the slack part figured out. Now we actually want to push through our feet, still keeping our chest tall, our arms long, and we want to create as much pressure as we can before we actually go to push through the ground. Too many people think of the deadlift as a pull only, and they try to pull the bar off the ground. Arms long, pull yourself into the bar, into the ground. So pull that slack, pull yourself, push your heels, so your heels heavy. Again, we don't want to be heavy on our toes, heavy on our heels, arms long, create slack, push through our heels. We're gonna wedge back a little bit. I'm in good position, and now I can pull. So hopefully you can see that by being able to create that pressure and that spring-based component, I'm really trying to create as much tension here as I can before the bar even goes. I'm actually shaking because I'm creating so much tension, but I'm not moving the bar yet. That way when I'm ready to push, some of the weight should already theoretically be quote unquote leaving the ground, and the amount of force I'm gonna need to push as you get out there. So I'm gonna use the leverages to my advantage to create tension, push, and then pull. So you want to be able to think in that order, create tension, push through the floor, and then pull into the bar, and that's going to keep your back in a much better position so that you're not going to round your low back. All right, the final coaching cue here is that you want to have your lats tight and your chest tall and proud. So you don't want to intentionally try to round as you deadlift. You still want to actually try to keep your chest tall or your sternum up. As I learned from Ed Cohn, your sternum should always be up in a good position. If your sternum is pushed down, that's going to leave you in a rounded base position. So by taking our sternum and actively pushing it here through a little bit of thoracic extension, nothing crazy. Okay, we're not trying to overly extend here, but I just want to take my sternum, push it forward, and then engage my lats as my arms are down. Now I'm in a good rigid position to pull. So once I'm down to the bar, I really want to think that sternum is going to come up, and from my lats perspective, pinky and ring finger squeezed and pulled towards me as I push that down. So I'm actually trying to create less space in between my armpits. And what's going to happen as I go to do that, one, of my slack's going to come out better, but then two, I'm in a position to create that big push and pull more effectively. And my chest, sternum is still here. Notice it's not rounded here. I'm gonna push my sternum here. So as I go to deadlift, I'm finishing in a good position. Okay, once you've got all that figured out, you should be in a good position to pull. But quite frankly, there could be some people that are still struggling with some issues of getting this figured out. In the meantime, something I would suggest is performing your deadlifts off of blocks or very low rack pulls. And what you can do here is you can limit any kind of mobility issues that you might be having and still deadlifting close to the floor and giving you a better leverage position to be able to maintain that back position that you're trying to create. The other thing I'll suggest too is that while you're actually doing this, break your reps up initially into singles or clusters. This is gonna let you be able to practice the setup multiple times and be in a good position every single time you go to deadlift, rather than knocking out sets of like 3 or 5 and then losing that position as the set goes on. You're just reinforcing bad movement patterns. So take about 4 to 6 weeks, step away, only do singles or cluster singles to really work on that position, that technique, with anywhere from 50 to 70, maybe 80% if you can really maintain your position, and then work on that position repetitively over and over. And then what you're gonna find as you go to push your weights heavier and higher and test the limits there, you're actually gonna have built that static strength that you're trying to develop to begin with. I think you're probably gonna set yourself up more for success. But don't just think that immediately taking these cues away, boom, is gonna fix everything, because you've been doing it for probably some decent amount of time at this point and having issues. And by having issues, you've ingrained those issues. So we want to work on the movement side, not only in terms of what you're physically capable of able to do, but also the movement aspect in terms of what you've ingrained, so that we can get good quality movement patterns ingrained for the long haul once you take some of those big time weights or even a PR attempt. The final thing I want to talk to you about here is accessory work. Accessory work definitely gets overblown, I guess is a good way to put it, in terms of being able to fix all this. While I do think accessory work is important and you need to target those accessory moves towards you, the big thing here is focusing on the movement first and then going after the accessory work. Too many people go after the accessory work first, thinking if they just bring up a muscle group, it's going to fix everything. But that's not how it's gonna work. You're gonna have to develop the movement patterns along with the accessory work, or even prioritizing the movements first, and then sprinkling accessory work in to aid that development. The common things that I like to make sure people can do well to be able to maintain this position are just a good old classic RDL, but really owning the position. Slowing down the tempo, making sure you can keep your back nice and flat and prevent rounding in your hinging patterns, and that can be any hinging pattern, not just a barbell RDL. The second thing would be using a safety squat bar good morning, but doing it from pins. So I would start from pins first so you can create that tension, make sure you're nice and flat in a neutral base position, and then come off the pins with the safety squat bar. Then you can actually go to the eccentric portion of it, is actually doing the good morning and then trying to maintain the position as you continue to lower, because it's going to be a harder movement pattern, because you're going to have to be able to control it as you get further down, which is going to make the movement harder. Your hamstrings are going to be stretched more, your low back is actually going to be able to take more of the grunt, and then you're going to train your erectors and your low back to be in a strong position and still make sure you're using your hips appropriately to finish the exercise. The other final exercise that I'll recommend is doing glute ham raises, and with good technique. Making sure that you're staying nice and neutral while you're doing your glute ham raises. Your low back's gonna get strong from maintaining that position, but then you're actually going to use your hamstrings at both the origin and the insertion to be able to perform the exercise. It's gonna bring up your hamstring strength, which many athletes lack, and then that alone is then going to develop your weak spot of your deadlift, and then you're gonna combine all that together, and more than likely those activities together are gonna fester together to give you a nice, good looking deadlift without having that low back round. All right, that's gonna wrap things up in terms of how to help you maintain a nice neutral back, prevent the rounding of your low back, and ultimately keeping your low back feeling better during your deadlifts. Again, I can't stress this enough. You wanna work on the technical side as well as the physical side, and overall that's gonna combine together to help you prevent your low back from rounding. If you're new to the deadlift just entirely, progress slowly and don't worry about putting on as much weight as you possibly can. Focus on your technique and your movement patterns first and build up gradually over 6 to 8 weeks. If you are an experienced deadlifter, hopefully some of these tips and tricks you can immediately implement and see some immediate feedback in terms of it's helping your positioning to help your deadlift. But again, remember it's going to be a combination of probably some accessory work and then some positional based things. These are all things that I've had great success with, not only with myself, but with my athletes and my clients in terms of maintaining their deadlift position being optimal for them. And again, you also got to remember everybody's built different. So make sure you just take some of the tips and tricks here that might be applicable towards you, that really click, that you get the most bang for your buck on, and then use those to help your deadlift. And then what you don't really need, you can kind of throw away or just keep in your pocket for maybe a future date if it happens to arise. Again, if you like this video, do me a favor, smash that like button, leave me a comment section. Did this help your deadlift technique? Will you be able to use this with your clients or yourself to clean up your deadlift? And then ultimately, if you really like the video, make sure you share it with a friend, and I really appreciate it. I'll check you at the next video.